Hi, friends. This is Marcia. We're on to week 5 of our Lenten study. I don't know about you, but I miss our soup supper and getting together. It would be fun to do it. I'm thinking next week maybe we need to do a teleconference, a Zoom conference, and get everybody talking and make it fun since it'll be our last week. And I think we're going to have to do it through the airwaves rather than in person. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well, making it through this social distancing that we're doing and staying healthy, keeping yourself surrounded by positive people and positive thoughts. As we move into session 5, which is on forgiving, I think this was a really interesting chapter for me. It certainly made me think a lot. And I think it did some of you also by the answers that I got. Anyway, let's start with an opening prayer. Holy God, your willing grace astonishes us when we consider what we, as human beings, have done to each other, to your creatures, and to this beautiful earth. Each of us has the seeds of destructiveness within us. Yet we struggle with hard feelings when it comes our turn to forgive others. Soften the soil of our hearts with the spring rain of your grace. Prepare us to be merciful as you are merciful. We ask this in the name of Christ, your mercy poured out upon us. Amen. I don't know about you, but this whole coronavirus has really brought out the best and the worst in some people. I see so much judgment where people are just judging people for their behavior. And, I think this book really kind of talks about you need to look at what's going on in somebody else's life or where they're coming from. Is there a reason that they're being the way they're being? And I think too often we just judge the way we judge and don't realize what's really going on. This is a good time to think about it. I've also seen the good in people. I've seen people come together and work together, and I'm hoping that's what we get in the long run. Anyway, one of the things to think about is what are the best reasons you can think of to forgive others. Some of the examples they gave us is God forgives us. Jesus set that example. I can see my own weaknesses or shadow side in the enemy. I've discovered the humanity of the offender. I think that's the big one for me. Holding on to a grudge or wanting revenge is ruining my life. I don't want to be the kind of person who can't forgive. Life is too short for hanging on to resentment. I want the pain passed on from earlier generations to stop with mine. The peace I want in this world begins with me. And one of them that I thought of is the unpleasant feeling that I get inside when I have something or someone I haven't forgiven. Mainly when I really think about it, it's because my ego is damaged or my feelings hurt. But the feeling that I have inside that gnaws at me is much worse than just letting go of my ego. Sarah had kind of written in and said, I think we all recognize that a predominant reason to forgive someone is for our own mental and physical health, by lifting an emotional burden, setting ourselves free, as they say. But it doesn't always work that way unless you have the courage to learn why the other person behaved as they did. If you can't do that, then maybe you can't yet forgive. And then as more time passes, maybe forgiveness no longer matters. It's a tough one for Sarah. I think it's a tough one for all of us. As time goes by, does it matter whether we forgive or not? I think it depends on how it feels to you. If you can't let go and it's still wreaking havoc inside of you, well, there's a reason to figure out how to forgive. And then they had the stories of forgiveness. They had, 3 different ones. Kelly, Chris, and Ron. And as I was reading it, I really identified with Ron, whose sister was killed by the axe murderer. And the reason is Cody had asked if I'd be willing to write to his cellmate from prison. and who's in jail. He was jailed at 19 and he's in jail for 65 years. So you have to figure that's a pretty serious offense that got him there for 65 years. And Cody kind of said he got caught up when he was young and didn't know what he was doing and is trying to come out of that now, trying to, realizes that he made a lot of mistakes. So anyway, I have written to this young man, I think he's probably 30 now. And he started talking about what his life was like and what got him into the life that he lived. I mean, his crimes, I'm not a gang type person. I don't, you read about them, you see them on TV, but it's never affected me. I've never lived in a gang infested neighborhood. But listening to what he went through and how that was the only life he knew. That's, he had to protect his street. He had to protect his friends and that kind of thing and show who's boss and the awful things that he did. Just, I can't even imagine. And I can't imagine what it's like to live knowing that you ruin somebody else's life or several lives or whatever. But I look at him and he really is trying to change that. He sees the folly. He sees all the things that he did wrong and what led up to it. And I guess that is where it is important to find out what brought it around, what made somebody act that way or whatever. And can you forgive for that? I mean, I don't have to forgive him. I'm not in a place to forgive him, but I'm in a place to understand him and be compassionate, I think, about him. And just help him through. I don't know what kind of help I can give him, other than I think he wants some spiritual help. I think he needs to be identified with a church, and I'm hoping that our church is going to be a good one for him, even though he won't be there. Hopefully he can learn more about us and that kind of thing. And then Susan Raidquist she wrote this to me. She said, the segment, When I Can't Yet Forgive, was startling to her. She was a victim of abuse and mental trauma and received counseling from professionals, including pastors. She was encouraged to forgive the offender because that would be the only way to free herself of the memories and the pain. A long time has passed since she went through this trauma, and she has healed greatly. But she says it would have been so helpful at the time if she had read the segment that says, serious offenses against the humanity of a person involving physical or psychological trauma cannot be forgiven quickly. When we are deeply wounded by betrayal or violence, it will take time, perhaps a long time, before sufficient inner healing prepares the soil of our hearts to nurture the fruit of forgiveness. Susan said she had an intervention for the offender so that he could hear from her, his family members, and friends their concerns over his quickly deteriorating mental state due to drugs and alcohol. He refused treatment, and she divorced him. He continued to make her daughter and her life very chaotic, which made her a stronger person in the long run. The greatest gift for Susan has been to retire and seek a life of peace, love, and justice for all, including her friends at Seaside. She says she wants to thank us all for sharing our stories so that we can help one another grow. Susan, we're glad we have you in our midst and that you went through that. Like I said, you never know what's going on in somebody's life, but our prayers are with you for continued healing. So as you think about all this, what thoughts and emotions would you find the most difficult to get past if you're thinking about forgiving somebody? And when you think about the people that did forgive, what made it possible for them to forgive? And can you identify one person in your life that you need to forgive? This person could be living or could be passed away. But now you have an opportunity to work on offering forgiveness rather than just receiving it. How would you like to approach or encounter this person, whether they're alive or passed away? What would you say to them? How would you feel? And what basic ideas or feelings would you want to express in conveying your forgiveness? And what might it feel like afterward? I know for me, I have somebody that I would love to go back and forgive because I was such a non-forgiving person at the time. And there were so many personal issues in my life that made me so unforgiving. And the person passed away before I ever had time to say, you know what? It took two of us to get where we got, and it's not fair for me to ever judge you because I had a part in this too. But I never had the opportunity to say those things. But you know what? Even I've been able to pray. I've been able to at least feel like I've helped his family. I've done other things. So hopefully in the long run, the forgiveness is there. Anyway, if you have any other thoughts on this, if you have any ideas on how you manage to offer forgiveness or feelings that you're still struggling with, or some intentions that you have, or what you've learned about yourself, please feel free to share those. I think it's really helpful. I think that's what we're missing in this whole thing, is hearing what each person, because I know you all have stories. You can't all have been angels and not had to forgive somebody in your life, or somebody didn't hurt you in some way. Anyway, I think for me, my biggest takeaway this week is think about what's going on and what went on in their life that made them act the way they acted, or did what they did, or said what they did. And like I said, my friend in prison right now, I think, is probably my biggest, I always wondered, how do you ever forgive Charlie Manson? He's my biggest, how do you ever get over that? Well, I don't know anything about Charlie Manson's early life, but when I look at this guy that I'm writing to, his early life did not give him any great chances in life. If all you're surrounded by is violence and gangs and that kind of stuff, how do you come out of that? How do you ever see anything different? Anyway, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. I hope you have a good week. And if you have any thoughts, please share them. And we will talk soon. Bye.